Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive EV live on YouTube. It's Q4 earnings day. It's doomsday for many. A lot of speculation going on. I think that there's definitely a convenient amount of timing that Tesla wanted to drop their big investment announcement in Giga Nevada like day before earnings. Although if their goal was to pump up the stock a bunch, it doesn't seem to be doing much. As of right now, the stock is up less than 1% today, which basically means I would say it has little to no impact at all. But usually the shareholder deck, which should be dropping in less than 30 minutes, is where we get the most useful information. So in the past, I've done live reactions to the calls themselves, and a lot of the time it's asking the same questions over and over again, and Tesla giving us the same vague answers because, well, we don't want to reveal too much, it's just an earnings call, and they just reassure us that, yep, the future is looking good, we have lots of money, we're still making lots of money, and I'm sure during the earnings call itself, everyone will be mostly asking about margins, and Tesla will reassure everyone that they still have really good margins even with the lower price cuts. So yes, the average selling price will decrease, but you got to remember, margins are going down when inventory and sales are going up. So when you're targeting a delivery rate of like 2.2 or 2.3 million vehicles, it doesn't really matter if the margin's much lower. You can still make more money because of the volume you're working with. So that's what I think most of the earnings call is going to be. So the one thing I'll let you guys be aware of, unlike my previous earnings reactions, is I will not be playing and doing a live reaction to the call, which will be way later. That'll be at like 2:30, which we still got like basically 2 hours until then. But the shareholder deck is always the most interesting to me because if they have announcements or updates for products or assembly lines or factories, they tend to put it in the shareholder deck. And that's actual earnings. That's when they tell you how much they made, how much free cash flow, how much margins. So that's the real data that we're going to be doing a live reaction to in just the next 30 minutes. But I probably am not. I'm definitely not going to be live during the actual call itself. What do you anticipate will be the biggest thing on the shareholder deck today, or what do you hope to see? Yeah, good question, Burkhart. Thank you. I think my biggest hope is best case scenario, Tesla decides to update the website with Cybertruck specs. That's probably too much wishful thinking. It's probably too soon for that, but I'm still under the belief that the sooner the better when it comes to Cybertruck expectations in terms of range, in terms of pricing, or even in terms of design. And in case you weren't aware, the shareholder deck is where Tesla announced the refreshed Model S with the yoke and the redesigned steering, not the capacitive buttons, and the landscape display. All of the updated designs were dropped in the shareholder deck. And that was also in January. It was a Q4 earnings call for 2020. It was the first earnings call of 2021, and that's when they dropped the refreshed Model S and X and updated designs and the rear display for the backseat passengers and all that. So if they were to update the Cybertruck website with the updated designs or what have you, this would, roughly be when it would take place. Although I guess the logic could be different because Tesla thought they were going to be delivering those updated Model S's and X's by March, and it actually didn't end up being delivered until June. But Tesla is claiming that Cybertruck deliveries are going to be mid-2023, so if they were okay with that big of a gap between unveiling to delivery, then now would be about the time that you would update the website with new specs or new designs. That would be great, but it's probably not going to happen. To answer your first question, what do I anticipate? I'm going to guess most of these earnings calls end up being, occasionally you get some really exciting ones, but most of the time it ends up being just stay the course. We're still doing good. We're making great progress on 4680s. We're making good progress on full self-driving. We're making good progress. And they just tell everyone everything is fine. Please buy the stock, basically. And, Tesla's going to do great. So it's probably the biggest thing on the shareholder deck will just be that Giga Nevada is getting a huge boost in investment. And that should allow for 100 gigawatt hours of production capacity that will eventually scale to half a terawatt hour, which is insane. I don't think people realize how many batteries that is. Yeah, like Mike is saying, all the construction job offerings I've been seeing in Nevada for Tesla make sense now. They definitely are looking for an additional 3,000 people. So I can't wait to hear what Mike thinks of that, because, Mike might end up being there someday. Who knows? If you want a long range Model 3 so much, you can easily get one from existing inventory. Yeah, exactly. Alpha, there's always going to be an inventory. They've been in inventory for a long time. Um, I know that you probably don't want to buy one from inventory, but I don't know where you live, you probably don't qualify for home delivery, which means you're going to have to drive to wherever the nearest delivery center is anyway, and wherever the nearest delivery center is, you'll probably have some in inventory. It'll be cheap to move one to that delivery center. I think we'd see news on Model 3 long range. Cybertruck news seems too good to be true. Personally, I don't know what news people are waiting for. I mean, like, they turned it off in the configurator, but you can still order them. They're still in inventory, and there's quite a bit of them, to be honest. I don't really see the need to bring it back to the configurator, but I would understand if Tesla decided to make a lower range version of it that was cheaper. And maybe that would sell better, because currently Model 3 inventory levels are growing, or not declining at the same rate as Model Y inventory levels, because Model Y is better value. Canada Collins says, I hope they keep it today boring just with financials, March 1st for excitement. Yeah, the investor day, right? That's when they're talking Gen 3 platform. Maybe they'll give us some sneak peeks to that. Let's see. Investment day will be product announcements. I'm not even sure about that. Why wouldn't you call it just a new, like, if there was a new vehicle, why wouldn't you call it a Tesla, you know, model unveiling? What we've had unveil events before where they launch new products, like the Cybertruck event or the Roadster / semi truck event. We have unveils. Why would they call it an investor day if there was really a product to unveil? My guess is investor day is going to keep it intentionally vague, because if they just come forward and say the Model B is coming out and it's going to be $25,000 and it'll be ready next year, that's going to completely tank current day sales. So I think that Tesla has to keep it intentionally on the under wraps, and maybe they'll talk about some of the manufacturing approaches they want for the Model B. They could say, I'm saying Model B, by the way, because I forget his name, but someone messaged me this morning asking, one of my supporters, so thank you for your guys' support. They were like, Elon's tweeting a lot about bees. Maybe he's hinting that a Model B is coming, which I thought that sounded hilarious and stupid and unrealistic, but also kind of, it made me chuckle. So I'm just going to call it the Model B now, because Elon said Model 2 is not a thing. So we'll call it the Model B because, I don't know, be sexy. That's the lineup. Be sexy. So the Model B, maybe at Investor Day, they talk about some of the approaches to the structural battery pack or to the single piece castings. Maybe there's some other innovations that Tesla hasn't told us about yet as to how they can reduce cost, reduce complexity. Maybe on the exterior, that's something I'm hopeful for, because I'm not really a huge fan of paint on cars. I'm all in favor of Cybertruck approach of, let's just have bare bones steel, something that's durable and can even take some scratches and take a few gashes in it and it still looks okay. Like, just something that's more durable, and in service centers you won't have to fuss so much about paint matching. And if you look at like how much of Tesla factory lines are designated to the paint shop, I feel like you could substantially reduce the complexity and reduce the factory square space. It's not sponsored. The factory footprint you need to produce a large number of vehicles if they came up with some kind of way of bringing the exoskeleton style of vehicle to a smaller, cheaper model rather than a pickup truck. I don't know if that's possible, but I don't know. I hate bees so much. Bees are kind of cool, but it's wasps that I hate. Bees only sting you if they have to, but they make honey and stuff, which I like, and they pollinate fruit trees, so we wouldn't have fruit if it weren't for bees. But wasps are freaking useless. Those things, they sting you for fun. They're jerks. They're rude. They're offensive. They're terrible. Yeah. with EVs going ham, I think there's a place for super low cost lead acid battery EV. It would cost around $2,000 for a new pack, even if it was to be replaced every few years with 1/3 cycle life of lithium ion. Maybe. I feel like the bigger problem with lead acid is just it's absurdly heavy. I mean, if there was much of a future in it, I feel like Tesla wouldn't have been switching away from they used to use lead acid 12-volt batteries in their cars, but now they switched them to lithium ion. I don't think that the cycle life, 1/3 the cycle. Yeah, I feel like LFP is the future personally. Like, I feel like that's the right amount of energy density, and high cycle life is ultimately what's going to matter more, rather than clogging up service centers with battery replacements and that kind of thing. Assuming same weight, a 50 kilowatt lithium ion battery translates to 18.5 kilowatt hour lead acid battery. Could up it to 20 kilowatt hours, range of 170. Yeah, I think that's a bit too low for what most electric vehicle needs are going to be. I mean, it'd be one thing if you were designing it for something like the Aptera, which could be hyper efficient and have like 100 watt hours per mile of energy consumption, but we're talking about things like robo-taxis. It might get a little bit more efficient than my current Model 3, but probably not substantially more, because I'm guessing they want the robo-taxi to be at least a 5-seater, maybe 6. I could just picture how we have 3 seats in the back row. You could just have 2 rows like that, maybe facing different directions or all facing. So in a pinch, you could have 6 people sit in the car, comfortably sit 4. And those types of vehicles with that much seating. And of course, I'm pretty sure that the Gen 3 platform will have 4 wheels. Wouldn't it be hilarious if the Gen 3 platform looks just like the Aptera and they just totally rip them off? That would be sad, but also kind of amazing at the same time. But yeah, but with less tires, you do get less rolling resistance. But the main issue with Aptera, extreme focus on efficiency, is it eats into the practicality of seating options. You pretty much can only do 2 seats in a vehicle like that. It's kind of sketchy if you try to do 3. Yeah, I wish Tesla will make a coupe one day, something like a Honda Del Sol type of deal. I believe it'll appeal to a younger audience. I think people who want the coupe are probably over-exaggerating how much cost having 2 doors does. Like, it's really not substantially cheaper to just have 2 doors compared to 4. Like, if you're talking about what's the most expensive part of the vehicle, it's not the doors, especially with EVs. It's all about the battery pack, and that's most of it, I feel like. And of course, the chassis and suspension and everything you have to design around that battery pack, and you can't really cheat that very much because batteries are inherently kind of heavy. So unless you're doing something absurdly efficient like the Aptera with a 25 kilowatt hour battery pack that can still get like 250 miles of range, you know, I think that the most expensive part of the vehicle are not so much doors or seat materials. I mean, if Tesla's getting really picky and they want to cut every last penny, I just think that the 2 doors probably compromises a lot on the functionality, especially if, from what I understand, the way Elon phrases it and the way they talk about it in earnings calls, the Generation 3 platform, I'm pretty sure, is meant for the robotaxi. And the robotaxi is just not going to be very practical if it's a 2-door. Yeah, the Model 3 does definitely appear to a younger audience for sure. And one thing that continues to impress me, and I'm sorry if you've heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again. It happened last night. Real tight sorry. I'm thinking too fast. Think about what you're going to say, Drew. Not a tarking pace, a parking space. Yeah. I saw very, very tight parking space at the restaurant we were eating at last night. And I was like, ooh, I don't know if we can fit there, but let me try, because I have ultrasonic sensors with park assist, so I'm feeling bold. But yeah, I pulled into this really narrow parking space, and I was like, I don't know if we can fit. This is going to be kind of tight. And I thought, you know, I had all the lines around me on the UI, and it was getting really narrow. They were all red. And I was like, okay, maybe I just barely fit. And then I got out of the car. I had like a foot of room around the entire vehicle. I thought I was way closer than I actually ended up being. And that continues to happen. Even after 5 months of ownership in this car, I am consistently impressed with how small this vehicle feels when you're on the outside. Like when you park, it can fit in such tight, such narrow spaces. But then you get on the inside and it feels massive. The interior cabin space on this car is mountains bigger than my old car, which my old car was taller, wider, longer. And you still have a ton of storage space in this vehicle. And I had to help my aunt move yesterday, and I was driving her BMW, and it just felt so crammed. The interior just gives you this, I don't know what it is, but I remember watching the Model 3 unveiling, and Elon talked about how they designed the interior of the Model 3 to give this feeling of openness and spaciousness. And I wasn't really sure what exactly he meant by that until I started driving it, and then started driving other vehicles that were bigger, that still felt more crammed on the inside. I don't know how they did it. I don't know if it might be the glass roof, it might be the acoustics, it might be how far forward the windshield goes, or maybe how much leg room I have. I don't know what it is, but the Model 3 proportions are consistently what impresses me. Maybe not the most, but the most, like, regularly, I could say. Like, I regularly, even after months of driving it, I'm still like, oh, we still have room? Oh, I can pull in more? Oh, okay. Like, it's just, I feel like making a 2-seater version of this would just be unnecessarily small, and I don't think it would reduce the price of the vehicle all that much. My car feels wider than it is. EV automakers outside of Tesla need to only sell leases in order to make money. Well, I definitely know there's EV companies trying to push people more and more towards leases like VinFast, but Tiemi, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, says, it was nice that my prediction about the percent of the price might go down was kind of correct. I don't know if you remember me saying that in the stream before the price of the cars went down. I don't remember the exact number you gave, but yeah, I'm happily wrong. Like, I don't try to say that all of my expectations or predictions are right. I've definitely been wrong a lot, but I love being wrong in that Tesla does something better than expected. You know, I hate being the guy that expects Tesla to be a certain way, and then they disappoint us and do something really sketchy, or really like screw the customer type mentality of increasing profits or what have you. I hate being that guy. I don't mind being the guy that says, I don't think prices are going to drop all that much, but I do remember saying I hope 2023 is the year we see price cuts. I just didn't think it would be all at once. I thought it would be incremental over time, because that's what Tesla used to do. But it sounds like Tesla was more about like, well, we qualify for this tax credit, the full credit for the next couple months. Let's take as much advantage of that as we can. And they just slashed prices by like 13 grand. And yeah, genuinely, I did not expect that. Like, I really didn't think they would do that. But I think it's better to lean on the side of caution than go into it assuming they're going to do that. Because that's not a normal thing. Like, as someone that's been watching Tesla for a long time, I've never seen them cut prices that quickly overnight. Just like one day it's 66,000, the next day it's 53,000. That was incredibly rare, and I'm not sure if we'll ever get that again. You know, it just kind of depends on demand and inventory levels, I guess. But yeah, hats off to the people that predicted it. Alpha says, lithium iron manganese phosphate should be the future of long-range EVs if the manganese helps increase the energy density. That's what I don't know too much about, is like, does the manganese lower the cycle life while increasing the density, or does the cycle life stay the same and the density just gets better? And there's got to be some compromise of using manganese. Everything has a compromise to a certain extent. And, you know, how much does it increase the density versus reduce the cycle life? I'm not sure. Tesla, as far as I'm aware, is still not using LFMP in any of their vehicles yet. But CATL was talking about it last year, like it was ready to come on the market. But maybe they're still testing it. Maybe they're doing high cycle life tests or calendar tests or temperature checking and that kind of thing. But I generally agree with you. I think that even if it's not manganese phosphate, just LFP batteries are slowly getting more. All batteries of all chemistries really are, every year they're getting more and more energy dense. Not by a lot, and I kind of said that in my video earlier today about the 4680. I see some people that are looking at the current generation 4680, which there's been teardowns of Sandy Monroe and Jordan from The Limiting Factor. We've seen them. They're out in the wild now. People have torn them apart and tested them, and The truth is, and I'm a Tesla bull, I'm a shareholder and I love Tesla and everything, but the truth is the current state of 4680s are not that great. They're not very energy dense. They actually use more cobalt than 2170 cells, which is not cheap. Um, and they're not lighter either. Like basically the 4680 Model Y, which as far as we're aware, this is the only Tesla being made today that has 4680 batteries in it. It's not lighter than the long range. It's not more efficient, and it's not longer range, and it's a little bit cheaper, but not much. So my guess is that all of the strengths of the 4680 cell right now is basically just cost and complexity, like Mike is saying. Yeah, the complexity of not having another element to worry about in the battery pack probably saves a lot on time. But the truth is, some people I've been watching are convinced that, well, this is just the first generation 4680 cell. The second generation will be substantially better. And as someone that's been watching the EV community and been learning more about batteries as time goes by, I that usually doesn't happen. Usually don't just flip one switch and now suddenly it's like 50% better energy density or 100% better energy density, which is kind of what you need if your argument is true about the Cybertruck needing 500-mile range or whatever. Most of the time with energy density increases, it's usually like, it's always happening, but it's pretty marginal. It's like, well, now we can fit 4% more energy. Next year we can do 5%, and now we can do another 5% the following year. And over the course of 10 years, that results in like a eventual 50% energy density increase. But rarely do you see that 50% jump in over the course of like 1 year. That's pretty rare. So I'm convinced that the 4680 cells are not that dense today, but they are very cheap and very simple to manufacture because of the dry electrode process and the tabless design. And it doesn't require much of a factory footprint like we saw at Giga Nevada. The layout of the factory where they show this is where we want to build 100 gigawatt hours of battery. It's not very much. It's not very big. So I think that the 4680 cells are all about scale and efficiency of production, not so much making the vehicle have really long range or making the vehicle way lighter or way cheaper, or maybe cheaper, but I think the main focus with 4680 cells is just about availability of vehicle grade batteries. And that's why the Tesla Semi currently is not using 4680 cells. That's why Tesla is still building 2170 Model Ys at Giga Texas. So all of that to say, I think that lithium iron phosphate, just like all battery chemistries, will slowly get more energy density over time. So like when I bought my car, it's reasonable to get a Model 3 with LFP that can go 270 miles on a charge. Again, EPA estimated range, not that important. But as years go by and energy density increases, the idea that, and also with some weight savings, of course, with either structural battery pack or with single piece castings, I think you could get even a regular LFP battery without manganese, probably to over 300 miles of range within the next 5 to 10 years. And then you'll have a high cycle life battery that's very cheap and very simple to produce. And sure, it's not the 400, 500-mile range that everybody claims they need, but it would be enough to consider it like a longer range EV. That would be beating out a lot of the standard range vehicles. Let's see. Screw lithium. With the stainless vehicles, they can use 1.21 gigawatt flux capacity. Yes! Thank you, Mark. That's a great idea. Harry says, will rear-wheel drive sell after March as the model won't get any tax credits? We already see rear-wheel drive inventory going up. You're asking the right questions, Harry, because this is exactly my thought process as to why Model 3 prices have gone down a lot, especially the long range and the performance, but the rear-wheel drive only got a $3,000 price reduction, whereas everything else got like a $13,000 or $9,000 price cut. And because it uses LFP, it's probably not going to get the tax credit come March 1st, or at least the whole credit, which means that the price might drop even further than it already has. So that's why I did that video. Was it yesterday or the day before? I can't remember. But I did a video earlier this week basically saying, I don't think we've hit the floor of Model 3 prices. I mean, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I didn't think Tesla would drop the prices by 13 grand. But the idea of it going down again kind of makes sense because this tax credit is kind of short term. So, I don't know the future. I could be wrong. Ooh, sorry for that bit rate. Oh my God. T-Mobile, what's wrong? I look so pixelated. Oh, jeez. What do I need to do? This happens sometimes. I apologize. I'm going to close background. It usually just takes a couple seconds and then it will recover and fix itself. But in the meantime, I look terrible, don't I? So many pixels. The compression. Okay, slowly give it time. Just like energy density of batteries, it's slowly going to start recovering itself. But yeah, this happens with my T-Mobile internet from time to time. Also, I'm in the car and kind of far from the router, so that might be part of it. But let's see. I do be looking like a PS1 game. Didn't know you were streaming Minecraft again. Yeah, we're back. Caleb says, this is semi-related. When/if the Lyric ordering process goes to plan, does Tesla sell a charger with a J1772 port? Yes. They have a wall connector that you can buy that is J1772. What a great name. That just rolls right off the tongue. I kind of hate how often people defend CCS. It drives me nuts when you think about, like, okay, guys, you realize how long-term this switch of energy storage mediums we use for our vehicles. Like, I feel like we're witnessing a very fascinating time in engineering history, going from the combustion engine car to the electric car. And frankly, I don't think there's going to be, at least in my lifetime, another form of energy storage that's going to beat batteries, or just the simple process of electric motor is incredibly simple, very few moving parts. I think that EVs are here to stay, and it's probably a whole different discussion I could get into. But personally, I think that EVs will live on and be the main format of vehicle transportation, just battery EVs. I mean, for much longer than the combustion engine. The combustion engine made sense for, a few decades. There were electric cars in the early 1900s, but they just couldn't keep up with the range and stuff. But I think that battery-powered vehicles will be the norm for hundreds and hundreds of years, personally. And the idea that we should just settle because some companies already picked CCS, when I'm like, guys, we're going to have vehicles by the tens of millions. And after a few years of that, like into the 2030s and 2040s, we're going to have tens of millions and eventually hundreds of millions of electric vehicles. All of them are going to have to use some kind of charge port. And you really just want to settle with, the CCS is kind of bulky, it's kind of ugly, it's kind of hard to navigate, and it's annoying to have the little flap that you have to open, and then the AC charging just uses J17, and the DC charging uses these 2 extra pins. You just want to put up with that when really the decision we choose to standardize could impact the next 200, 300 years of charging experiences. Like, seriously? Like, you really want to just settle on that when this is something our grandkids are going to be dealing with? Like, no, like, let's get this right now. It's still very, very relatively early in the EV transition. It's growing exponentially, and every day we don't standardize NACS, it's going to make the transition harder. But in the grand scheme of the electric vehicle transition, we are very early. So I don't subscribe to that idea that, we've already been using CCS for so long. And it's not the same CCS they use in Europe. So please don't use that as an excuse of, the rest of the world already uses CCS. No, it doesn't. They can't agree on what CCS is. And Asia has a different connector, and South Korea or Japan, I think, uses NACS already. They use the Tesla connector. They don't use CCS. So we've already abandoned, basically. Humanity lost our chance to have one connector for the entire globe, and we can't even have that for households. Like, homes have different outlets depending on the country. So the idea of having one car with one port for the entire world, that sounds great, but it's just not going to happen. But there is a chance that we can, at least in the North American market, all agree on NACS. But it's all on the companies. It's all on the automakers, and they still can't commit to it, which is driving me nuts. But if anything, it's very much solidifying the fact that I will continue to buy Tesla vehicles over other brands that choose to use CCS. I have an Orbi mesh satellite close to my garage and carport. Yeah, most of the time it works fine. Other than that, like once every hour or so, I get a little bit rate drop like that. Other than that, the internet quality has been great from the garage. Why not use just wireless charging? Because wireless charging is incredibly inefficient, especially with cars, and the technology required for it is exponentially more expensive than just a simple connector. So if your complaint with electric vehicles is that they're not affordable or mainstream yet because they're too complicated or they're not cheap enough, then wireless charging is a horrible idea. You have to put this giant coil on the bottom, which can get lots of interference if you live in cold climates and there's gravity. Like, cars are dealing with a lot more road debris, especially on the bottom, than your phone is. Wireless charging a phone is not a big deal because phones are very, very low power consumption. EVs are going to be most households' biggest electricity consumer, so switching that to wireless charging is just going to result in a huge amount of inefficiencies, and you can solve that problem of, oh, what if I don't want to deal with a plug, with just automated robot arms. Those are way, way cheaper than ginormous wireless inductive charging pads. It'll be way cheaper to just have a motorized arm that can plug a cable into a charge port, which there's already companies doing, and Tesla's already working on it. So if you're really that annoyed, personally, I don't find it that annoying. I think that's not the future either. I think most people are just going to learn to plug in their car just like they plug in their phone or laptop. I've been doing it for 5 months. It's not a big hassle. It saves way more time compared to what you got to do at a gas station. But wireless charging stations are a horrible idea for cars, in my opinion. It just drives the cost of manufacturing way up. It makes charging way slower. It wastes a lot of energy. It's way more likely to have interference thanks to the debris and mud and dirt and rocks that collect on the bottom of the car. It's just not a good idea by any means. So I'm refreshing the investor relation page right now. They should drop the shareholder deck at any moment, so stay tuned for that. I'm still checking. Let's see. CCS was designed to be annoying. Well, in that case, it succeeded. MagSafe. No, you don't need MagSafe. You just plug it in. There's no point to it being magnetic. It's a giant cable. It's not the same thing as your phone. For the same reason your car won't have wireless charging or MagSafe, your car also won't charge via Type-C. Even though Type-C is a great connector and a great port, that's for a certain market. Like, I'm using USB-C to power my laptop right now, but trying to cram anything more than 200 watts through a USB-C port is just not going to be a good idea. Let's see. What if Tesla goes back on 2170s for rear-wheel drive, as it might get half or even full tax credit? Is that a possibility? I just think that if you have 2170s available, they're going to be better used in the long-range Model Y because the margins on that vehicle are way better. It's not impossible that they could go back to using 2170s. To play devil's advocate, Harry, it does stand that there does appear to be evidence that there are a lot of 2170 cells to come by. That's pretty much what all startup EV makers are using. Rivian's using tons of 2170 cells, and they have huge battery packs for their trucks, and they're ramping their trucks and SUVs incredibly quickly, all with 2170s. Lucid's using 2170s, Canoo is using 2170s, Aptera is using 2170s, and Tesla is using 2170s in the semi-truck, which needs gargantuan battery packs. So it appears there's no shortage of 2170 cells. So if you really wanted to qualify for the tax credit, I guess they could go back to it, but I still think that LFP is cheaper because there's no nickel or cobalt in them, and it makes a lot of sense for LFP in a standard range vehicle because you want that to be a higher cycle life. I think that's why you can find so many used Model 3s standard range. Oh, sorry guys. It's up. It's time. Yep. Failed to load. Oh, no, come on. Maybe it's not ready yet. Basically, the reason you can find a lot of used standard range Model 3s from a few years ago is because they have the 2170 cells. They degrade faster. So the range, even though it starts on day one with a 240, 250 mile range, after you put 40, 50,000 miles on it, it's now a max range of like 220, 215. And then once you start putting 100,000, 200,000 miles on it, it's a max range of sub 200, which for some people is fine. I'm not trying to say that's not enough. Man, maybe they put like a dead link in here. I'm refreshing it. My internet's not dead because clearly we're live. And I can refresh the page. My bit rate's actually very strong right now. That's funny. Weird. Maybe I should try it in a different browser? Usually Chrome is the default, right? That's what everybody uses. Let me try it in Safari. Hey! It works in Safari. Take that, Google Chrome. Okay, so Safari was the solution. Okay, growth in vehicle deliveries, quarter-end cash equivalents increased sequentially by 1.1 billion to $22.2 billion in Q4 by free cash flow of 1.4 billion. Oh my God. And offset by more debt repayments. Even more cost of, let's see, operating income improved year over year, resulting in a 16% operating margin. Okay, cool. Oh yeah, they recognize more FSD revenue. Lower stock-based compensation, payroll tax, cost of production ramp of 4680 cells. I'm sure that's a lot. Let's see. I want to see pictures. Ooh. Giga Berlin is a piece of art. I agree. There's the paint shop. Megapack final assembly. Nice. They're building more of these. Ooh. Giant stamping press at Giga Shanghai. Awesome. There's Giga Nevada's expansion. Cool. Yes! The Cheeto bullet is beautiful. Wonderful, wonderful. Giga Texas is building 4680s actively. Okay, sorry, no Cybertruck updates, as far as I can tell. Ooh, package is available for delivery. Ooh, Cybertruck remains on track to begin production later this year. Oh, they're saying later this year. You guys know what that means. I might be right. Our next generation vehicle platform is under development with additional details to be shared at Investor Day, March 1st. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, see, they used to say here Cybertruck production would begin mid-2023, but now they're just saying later this year. Supercharging locations are growing. That's good. Let's see. Vehicle software. Oh, wait. We are particularly focused on vehicle costs during this period of macroeconomic uncertainty, high interest rates, and vehicle price deflation. We continue to focus on cost efficiencies while improving functionality and reliability. That's good. Would expect you to. Let's see. Cybertruck's still in tooling stage. Tesla Semi is now listed as pilot production, which is a good sign. That counts as production. Yeah, Roadster is still listed. No Roadster updates. Over 3,000 vehicle in a week towards the end of Q4. Produced enough in-house 4680 cells in a single week to make over 1,000 battery packs. Pilot production Tesla Semi commenced in Q4, with first deliveries occurring in December. Okay. That's good. Supercharger connectors, 42,000. Jeez. That's good growth. Okay. They're pretty decent news so far, but nothing amazing. Let me check on you guys. What are you saying? Let's see. This is what we've been waiting for. The big moment, it doesn't even load. I guess we'll have to blame Google Chrome for that one. Can we get more superchargers in up Michigan, please? Then I won't need the long-range Model 3. Yeah, I feel like that's what more people are waiting for than... to me, like, there's got to be more charging stations, right? Like, we know that's going to happen regardless of what EVs are available. All companies that are making charging stations have agreed we're going to continue making charging stations, and we want to make better charging stations that are more reliable and faster and more optimized and what have you. So we all can agree there will be more charging stations, just even if range doesn't change at all. Even if electric vehicles don't grow in sales and they just stagnate and they sell the exact same they've been selling, we're still going to need more charging stations. But as charging stations become more plentiful, the need for 400, 500 mile range is going to dwindle. Because I know it happens, but I don't think most people driving gas cars necessarily go that far without stopping, drive 400, 500 miles nonstop without a, restaurant for food or bathroom break. And the difference is for gas cars to go 500 miles, it was not that expensive or not that complicated because you could store a lot of energy in a gas tank and just make it relatively aerodynamic and have a fairly efficient combustion engine, which is kind of an oxymoron. And you could get most cars, even cheap cars, to 500 miles, where it will fundamentally never be that way with EVs because of how big battery packs need to get, how heavy batteries are fundamentally, and the more weight you pack in the car, the more energy it's going to consume per mile. So it's like it gets exponentially more expensive once you want to go to 400, 500 miles of range in an EV. It can be done, but I don't think it'll ever be competitive cost-wise. Like there won't be a big difference. There will always be a giant difference in price between the 300-mile range EVs and the 500-mile range EVs. Like there will be increasingly a wider gap. And I just think what's more likely is lower range EVs that are cheaper than higher range EVs just magically becoming so cheap to build that everyone has range that high. I don't think that'll happen. They do have a call today. Yes. Handmake Roadsters. Do you know if superchargers will be coming to my country in Jamaica? I'm sure they eventually want to do that. I don't know when. But yeah, earnings are out. FSD revenue recognition was $324 million in Q4. 16% operating margin. Achieved the highest ever quarterly. Tesla in the last quarter. I'm reading Sawyer's highlights now, which is always cool. Oh yeah, the EPS, is that what you're asking? With Gap was $1.07 versus 98 cents estimated. So it sounds better than non-GAAP was $1.19 earnings per share. Sorry, $1.19 versus $1.10 estimated. So it's actually a bit better than Wall Street was anticipating. Automotive gross margin was 25.9%, which is a little bit lower than people estimating 26.4%, but that's probably because of all the end of year discounts they did for, $3,750 and then $7,500 and stuff. More chargers, cheaper means less need for batteries. There will always be a huge need for batteries. It's just you can make vehicles substantially more affordable if you don't put, 80 to 100 kilowatt hour battery packs in each one. I just don't think that's the future. You can disagree with me, that's fine, but I think that it's going to be way cheaper and inevitable that charge stations will become more and more plentiful. And that's the exact reason that we don't talk about range in gas cars. No one's asking when a new gas car comes out, well, what's the max range? It's like you don't care. Most of the companies talk about the efficiency, what's the miles per gallon, but we don't worry about range because we know that there's going to be gas stations available. And EVs are already approaching that point where, at least if you drive a Tesla and you live in a place that 90% of the world lives, you're probably not that far from a supercharger. And that if you're not, then that will increasingly get closer as more and more superchargers become available. Let's see. In the last quarter, we achieved the highest ever quarterly revenue, operating income, and net income in our history. In 2022, total revenue grew 51% year over year to $81.5 billion, and net income more than doubled. That's awesome. So the financials look good. But they're saying they released FSD beta to about 400,000 cars. I think people are going to misuse that. Sorry, I can bring up the shareholder deck so you guys. Oh wait, I opened it in Chrome. That's where it went. I think people are going to misuse that, especially the hyperbulls are the type of people that say, well, you see, Tesla said right here that they brought FSD beta to 400,000 cars. That means 400,000 people paid full price for full self-driving. And it's like a lot of those people are subscribed to FSD for $200. And they subscribe to it maybe 1 or 2 times a year, but just occasionally. So people are going to just if you take 400,000 and multiply that by 10,000, That's an insane amount of money. But, I mean, they did recognize a bunch of revenue from it, so that probably helps. Um, yeah, FSD revenue recognition of $324 million. That's quite a bit of software sales. I don't think any other automaker can claim they make that much via software. Um, Shanghai's at over 750,000 capacity. That's good. And Berlin and Texas are at over 250,000. Not really much change there. Cybertruck still in tooling. Giga Shanghai remains our main export hub, supplying vehicles to most outside the U.S. Yeah, okay. So not any huge surprises, but that's what some people were asking for. Energy storage went up quite a bit. That's awesome. See, as this trend continues, as the supercharging locations continue, I think the need for higher range EVs isn't going to be as high as you'd expect. Let's see. When I was learning for my car license, they said after driving 2 hours that I should take 15 minutes rest, that 2 hours, then 2 hours again. Yeah, I have not honored that recommendation, but I definitely have heard that. I mean, semi-truck drivers are typically not allowed to drive like 500 miles nonstop. They're forced to stop and rest. Let's see. I got a 30 trip soon, and I would never make it with 2 hour break times. Yeah, I don't know about two. I've driven 500 miles nonstop. I can do it. I know I'm not going to be happy. It's not a pleasant experience. Like my last car can drive over 500 miles on one tank, but I didn't want to get a long range Model 3 because it's like you just got to keep in mind that batteries fundamentally work differently. You're not charging to full and then driving till empty and then charging to full again. Inherently, the way batteries work, they're going to charge faster at lower states of charge, which means you're not really charging to 100%. You're charging until you can reach the next stop. And with that in mind, the road trip time difference between the long range and the standard range is, for like a day's worth of driving, a difference of like an hour or less, maybe like 40 minutes, 30 minutes. So I was like, yeah, I'm not spending an extra 10 grand to save 40 minutes of driving. I'll just keep that money and, you know, have some nice meals or have some more relaxing stops when we're charging up. If you keep it EV longer than its warranty, you will want a longer range EV. Sure. I mean, I don't think you can convince people that they don't want long range. It's just, is that extra range worth it? You know, would you? There's obviously a line for everybody. Like the Aptera is very different in that it's like, okay, you can spend an extra $5,000 and get an extra 200 miles of range. Okay, that's a big jump. But if it's a difference of 50 miles of range for, you know, $10,000, yeah, that's kind of harder to justify. More range is a nice to have. I'm just saying it's not a need to have. Let's see. To grow to the fastest rate, we need to utilize all batteries. I just don't think lead acid is the cycle life isn't going to be sustainable. Like it's going to cost too much to replace over time, and the weight of lead acid batteries is not very good, which eats into your efficiency. Let's see. My Model Y was around 280 miles, and I never thought about it. Drove from LV to LA a bunch, and it's never a concern. I like to stop and get lunch anyway. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people's range assumptions changes after they get the vehicle, because I used to have mindsets towards it, and I used to think about it a lot until I bought one and started driving it around, and I was like, yeah, you really don't think about that very much. It doesn't really come up. You're not really worried what the max range number is because you hardly ever charge to full, and the battery degrades a bit over time anyway. But I don't know. I could make the argument that if you're planning to own the vehicle until outside of its warranty, you would want a higher cycle life, not so much a longer range, because if you choose a longer range EV and then something goes wrong with that battery pack and you need to replace it, it's going to cost way more to replace a long range battery pack than it is an LFP standard range battery pack. So in the likelihood that the LFP battery pack would need to be replaced is much lower because of the higher cycle life. So it could go either way. If your logic is just, well, you'll have a lot of degradation over the course of 10, 15 years, therefore get as much range as you can on day one, sure, but you're choosing a cathode that inherently has more degradation on fewer cycles. We tried lead acid way back in the day. There's a reason we don't use them anymore, specifically the maintenance of cleaning and nurturing those heavy bricks. There actually were many electric vehicles pre-1990s, like the city car and some of the earliest EVs that were lead acid, and that didn't really get them anywhere. Um, Long range is good to have. I just don't think it's a need to have. Um, it depends on your definition of long range. Like the difference between standard range and long range Model Y is like 50 miles now. But I mean, the price is very close. But I think if they brought down the price of the standard range, a lot of people would be comfortable with it. I don't know if the EV1 was lead acid based, but I wouldn't be surprised. But I know the range was not great on the EV1. I mean, for the time it was good, but now, no. I think there's a very good reason we don't use lead acid anymore. Yeah, want and need are vastly different. If you just asked everybody, would you rather have a 400-mile range or a 250-mile range? Obviously, everyone's going to say 400. But if you ask them, do you want to spend $50,000 on your car or $35,000 on your car, I think they're more likely to say 35. And that's why I think that's the future, is because like the amount of time people are willing to drive nonstop is not consistently over like 400 in my view. Is there a range that's too low? Obviously. I mean, no, we can all live with 1 mile range, clearly. That's what people thought I was saying when I did my range is overrated video. People were like, but I need range sometimes. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying range isn't important. I just think people hold too much value in that day one 100% EPA estimated range number, when you very rarely hit that at all, and it changes depending on the brand and how it was tested, and also it degrades over time and you don't hit that number, and also you don't charge the 100% very much. So I think people just hold like, but maybe we can, because in streams and stuff people were talking about like, oh, maybe they can update the Model Y to get 350 or 360 miles of range, and I'm like, it's all semantics at that point. Like, it's charging speed and charger availability. That makes the biggest impact on your road trip time, not so much the max range number. Yeah, EV1 used lead acid batteries. Poor EV1. Rest in pieces. Would have to be Aptera efficient in order for lead acid to be viable. And I don't think Aptera wants to use lead acid, so I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, like Harvey Smith said, the MKBHD road trip video opened my eyes to it being the charging network more than the range. It's true, because there's so many variables. Like, it's still such a weird thing to be like, what's the range? It's like, well, how are you driving? Where are you driving? What's the elevation? What's the temperature? What's the wind speed? How many people are in the car? All of those things impact your range. And the EPA cycle, which is the most accurate out of most government cycles that we have, is still not very accurate, and it'll be under performing for Porsche vehicles and overperforming for Tesla vehicles. So comparing the two is kind of killer. The Porsches are actually much better at road tripping than I think people made them out to be. They just scored poorly on the EPA range test because they're not super efficient at low speed, but they're very efficient at high speed because of the 2-speed transmission. Which ideally, you'd want to have high efficiency when you're traveling far, because that's when you're going to be at high speed, and that's where you're going to need to be able to travel great distances nonstop. But the outcome of that is, for one, it makes the vehicle more expensive, and when it's at low speed, it's hauling around a lot of extra parts and weight, and that's why basically the Taycan performed so poorly on the EPA test, because the EPA test is like 45% city driving and 55% highway driving, and it scored poorly on the city driving, so that brought down the EPA estimated range number, when in reality on the highway, it got way better range than the EPA said it would get, because it was fine-tuned for it. What do you think? Let's see. Where do you think cars go to after warranty runs out? Heaven? What happens to them? Most folks don't keep their cars past warranty. I don't know what you're referring to in that way. I know a ton of people that... I actually can't think of anybody in my personal life that still has a car under warranty. I don't know if it's just because of where I live, but most people buy used cars and drive them for well after their warranty expires. Maybe it's different in big cities or something, but where I live, it's very common for people to have their cars past warranty. Um, Cybertruck will probably be my only new vehicle. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people saying that. They're like, that'll be my only new car and it'll be my last car. I hope it's affordable. In the future, a proper SUV on Cybertruck platform would be awesome. They should call it Tesla CUV, Cyber Utility Vehicle. Oh, I like that, CUV. We need more vague terms. The Cyber Utility. Yeah, I think a lot of companies, Rivian especially, are decent at just converting a pickup truck into a three-row full-size SUV. And I would love to see a SUV version of the Cybertruck, but Tesla likes their clean, simple lineups, and I don't think it's probably being talked about or considered right now because they just have enough on their plate as is. And the Cybertruck ramp, I think, is going to be really long and problematic. I think it's going to take a long time for them to scale up production at a high enough volume before they actually start catching up on orders. Like, people, I think, forget a lot of the time that pickup trucks are the best-selling individual vehicles in the United States. Like, they outsell everything. Tons of people buy pickup trucks here. And the Cybertruck is also one of the most unique and bizarre-looking and most iconic, like, new vehicles coming out on the horizon. I can't think of anything else, maybe Aptera, that's more special and, like, individualistic. Like, honestly, I think what I'm most excited for with the Cybertruck is just something different. We have so many sedans, so many SUVs, and even a lot of the pickup trucks share a lot in common. I love the Rivian, but it does just kind of look like a pretty futuristic looking pickup truck, whereas the Cybertruck feels like it's almost in a completely different class. Like, I don't think the Rivian will turn heads as much as the Cybertruck will, just because of how bizarrely shaped it is. And that alone, I think, is going to draw a lot of attention to it, turn a lot of heads, bring a lot of eyes towards it, and the demand for that Cybertruck. Like, I ran polls on this, which I know some people don't think YouTube polls are that accurate. I would honestly argue they're a bit more accurate because of how wide the sample size is. And in this particular case, I was trying to get a Cybertruck enthusiast poll data. And I was like, if I end up being right and the first Cybertruck is like $100,000 for 300 miles of range, would you cancel your order? And a surprising number of people, again, I'm not saying my polls are hyper accurate and perfect indicator. There's probably some skewed data, but a surprising number of people said they would still do it in that poll. There was like, I want to say it was like 40 or 50% of the people that voted said that they would still go through with the purchase, even if the specs were that bad. And I don't know if they'll be that bad. They might be better. But if there's any remote truth in that poll, it's that not that many people are going to cancel even at higher pricing because they've had more time to save for the Cybertruck. Nothing really comes close to it. Like the things we love about it which is that, for one, it's a Tesla, so it has NACS, it has supercharging access. Also, it's extremely durable. It stands out in the crowd. That exoskeleton, the paintless design, the vault, the aerodynamics, the efficiency, the minimalist interior. Like, there's really not an alternative to it. And I've also met a lot of people that are like, some people are like, oh, some people are going to buy Rivians. Rivians exist. That's going to take away sales from the Cybertruck. I've seen many comments from people saying, I bought a Rivian and I will sell it when the Cybertruck comes out. It's like, they'll buy whatever. So in the same way, I think Tesla could start with a 300-mile range Cybertruck, claim that a 500-mile range Cybertruck will come out later, and still, even the people that want the 500-mile range Cybertruck will buy the 300-mile range and say, I'll live with this until the 500-mile range is ready, and then I'll sell my Cybertruck or trade it in. And, there's a lot of impatience surrounding that product. So that's why I think ramping it up and getting to the point where you can match demand for it is going to take so incredibly long, which is why they won't mess around with an SUV probably for a long time. Let's see. I'd be happy with 200 miles of range pulling a trailer. Unfortunately, that requires a big-ass battery. Yes, it does, Steve. You're right. That's going to be, in my opinion, the last thing to convert to electric are people that tow great distances. Um, that's where diesel or gasoline basically is going to continue to make sense for a very long time, because inherently just vehicles with massive battery packs like 180 or 200 kilowatt hours, they are not going to be cheap, and they're not going to be easy to scale, and they're not going to be financially viable for companies to prioritize until down the road. Like, for the sake of manufacturing efficiency, it's just going to make so much more sense to start with the 300-mile range variant, especially with the current state of 4680 cells being not super energy dense. There's a path. We can see a clear path to 500-mile range pickup trucks, but I just don't think it's close. So if that's what your use case is, I think gas is going to continue to make the most amount of sense for quite some time. Cybertruck ramp will be much faster than the Rivian and Lightnings. Yeah, I agree it'll be faster. It'll be the most profitable electric pickup truck. I'm not convinced Rivian or Ford are selling their trucks at a profit based on their earnings reports or what they say about them. I don't think they're cool trucks, but they're not very profitable. Even the Hummer I don't think is very profitable. Even at $100,000, it's like it's like a 215 kilowatt hour battery pack in there. And it's so complicated, like all the little compartments. I think you learn so much about the different approaches of design just by the windshield wiper. The Cybertruck has one, and the Hummer EV has three. And I think that says a lot. I mean, it's an indication of how they design the trucks under the hood. And I think that the Cybertruck will be bare bones, very simple, very minimal to manufacture. It's only going to have one color option. I think it'll probably only have one tire option, probably only have one interior choice. I think the options will be, full self-driving or no full self-driving, which is software. And maybe in the future, multiple battery packs sizes. Maybe different powertrain sizes, but probably not more than two. I think they'll just do a quad motor and maybe a dual motor. But I don't think they'll do a single motor. I don't think they'll do a tri-motor. I could be wrong. There's a lot of EVs I want to get. You ever look into electric motorcycles, Drew? Eyeing a Zero motorcycle? Yeah, I have looked into them in the past. Genuinely, my dad is the motorcycle guy. I wish he was here right now to talk about him. He loves riding, and I've ridden, mountain bikes over the years, and I like biking and stuff, but it's not so much the safety that concerns me, although that is a factor, that motorcycles are a lot more dangerous, especially if it's not so bad if you're, going off-road and riding through the mountains on a motorcycle. It's more so when you're sharing the road with other, 2 to 4 ton vehicles and you're just a guy on a bike. That's a little scary, but also because I work from home, I still drive a lot, but I'm almost always driving with my wife. And when I'm always driving with my wife, I like being able to talk to her. I like being able to hold her hand. And I like being able to have a conversation. And I'm very picky now, especially with the heated steering wheel. I like my seat being heated. I like my steering wheel being heated. I'm kind of picky with climate temperatures and that kind of thing. And everything with, driving on the road with motorcycles is like putting on all this gear. You got to put on the helmet. You got to put on the suit. You got to put on... you should be putting on reinforced, clothing, like with your pants and stuff, in case you fall over and slide. And I'm just more of like an efficient, both with the vehicle and with time type guy. Like, I just want to get in the car and go. I don't want to have to put on a bunch of stuff. And I also don't want to feel super cold or super hot in the heat of the summer or the cold of the winter. So if I got one, they're cool, I respect them, and I think they're fun, but I just don't have much of a use for them. If I had an electric motorcycle, I would probably never use it. I need and I could fit me and my wife on the motorcycle, but then she's going to be cold, I'm going to be cold, we can't talk very much. You can get those little speaker things. My parents have that, where you can have an intercom and you can talk back and forth, but it just adds to the complexity. And again, you got to get dressed to go out and ride. Whereas in a car like this, it's a pretty cold day. I mean, not super cold, but it's a little chilly out, and I can just walk out into the car in a t-shirt and be like, yeah, it's no big deal, because the car has HVAC and stuff. So I'm not super interested in them, but I know other people are. I would love to watch more of your videos, Mike, in the woods on electric motorcycles, because I think you're more into the adventuring side of things than I am. Um, let's see. The CUV will not qualify for IRS tax breaks due to not being a truck. I don't think they need to worry about it doesn't. I mean, the Model Y 7-seater qualifies, and this would definitely be heavier than that. Um, but yeah, also electric motorcycles are not very cheap. They're like, their range is usually pretty low. And I mean like sub 100 miles low, not like 220, 210. That seems low in the EV community, but with motorcycles, it's like, oh yeah, you can barely find anything that goes 200 miles at highway speed. And the cost is still like in the $18,000 to $20,000 realm, and it's a lot less functional than a car. So I'm just not a motorcycle guy, I guess. Um, let's see. My Jag has one wiper. I was complaining about the miles per gallon, and my friend said, "Yeah, but think of all you'll save on wipers." That's wonderful. I like your friend. Let's see. Are you using front license plate on my Model 3? I am not, actually. They gave me a little adhesive thing to stick to the front, but I was so worried that I was going to make it off-centered or, not in the exact middle of the car. I don't like front license plates. And I know that where I live, they say you have to do them, but literally, like, there's so many people without front license plates all the time. Like, you could drive for 10 minutes in my town and count, like, I've done this myself. You could drive for 5 minutes across my town and you would count over 10 vehicles that don't have front license plates on them. Like, it's just not very enforced. And Randy doesn't have one either, and he lived in San Diego for several years. So that's like a major city, and they don't enforce it there. And I'm not in a major city, and they definitely don't enforce it here. So it's like, if I get pulled over and they get mad at me for it, okay, I'll put it on. But um, that's never happened. I've never heard of that happening, and I've never seen that happen. Uh, yeah, Tesla crushed profit expectations. It was a good quarter. The earnings call will be in under an hour. I'm not going to stream my reaction to it because I just don't think it's going to have that much insight. It sounds like energy storage is growing. Services are growing. Solar's growing. Like, things are looking good. There's just not a lot of, like, new info. It's mostly just, yep, we made a bunch of money thanks to full self-driving and thanks to thick margins on our vehicles. They had their best year ever, and Q4, they made a ton of money. Look at that net income. My God. Yeah. Over $3 billion in income. Yeah, so they're doing good, basically. Don't worry about Tesla. They're looking just fine trailing 12 months. Yeah, I like this picture, though. Look at all those Cheeto semi-trucks. This is beautiful, too. I like the idea that every employee is driving a Tesla. This is what I think will become most parking lots in the future. I don't think there will be that many different designs. It's just going to be dozens of millions of Model 3s and Ys all over the world, and people are going to be bored of them. But you're not going to be able to find a charging network better. That's what I think the future is, just a crap ton of Model 3s and Ys. Let's see. In the Philippines, I see the entire family riding in one motorcycle. Oh, yeah, I've been there. They're crazy. They ride. They fit so many people on those tiny little motorcycles. Tri-motor tech from Semi and Cybertruck. 3 battery options for the basic driver and the tow driver. I don't know why you need 3. I think you could do basic and tow package, and that'd probably be enough. Tesla doesn't usually have more than 2 options. I mean, arguably, they don't have, like, all Model Ys are dual motor, and Model Y long range and Model Y performance have the same battery pack. Same story with Model S mostly. Model S Plaid and Model S long range have the same size battery pack. It's just one has 3 motors, one has 2. Same thing with the Model X. Battery pack, especially in their higher end vehicles, doesn't have too many options. With Model 3, that's kind of the weird one where they have long range and performance using the same battery pack, but the rear wheel drive has LFP. I don't know if Cybertruck will ever get that, but I would like it if it did. I want it to get LFP, but if it does, I think it'll be way down the road. Probably not in the first 2 or 3 years of production. I think that the ramping of production will go so slowly because the Cybertruck is not like the Model 3 and Y. It's not as simple. It's not as efficient. It doesn't have battery packs as tiny. You need massive battery packs, rear wheel steering, air suspension, air compressor that you can tap into, outlets, armored glass, more seats, different displays, different steering yoke. There's so many differences with it. It's basically starting from scratch. So I do believe that production will start in limited volumes this year, but I don't think that they're going to get through their backlog of orders for probably a good 2 years to 3 years, unless they price it just so absurdly high that everybody cancels. But I don't think that many people will cancel, to be honest. Let's see. Do Tesla factories have a charger for each employee that drives a Tesla? Not each employee, but quite a bit. At Giga Texas, if you watch Joe Tegmeyer's drone videos, there's huge sections of the parking lots that are just Tesla wall connectors or destination chargers, and a lot of people top off there. There's also a supercharger at Giga Texas that, you don't plug into that for hours, but they do have them. Let's see. They're not cheap. The Zero DSR X is 31,000 Canadian dollars. Yeah, see, that's Model 3 pricing nearly. Let's see. Each parking spot should have a charger. I don't think it's necessary, to be honest. It's very expensive to put to make sure every parking space has a charger, but I think that most charging is going to be most economical to be plugged in overnight when you're sleeping. I think wherever your car is parked overnight, that's probably where it's going to be charged long term. I know there's some people that do on-street parking and some people that live in apartments and park in parking garages. But there's already some of those that are accommodating for that. And it's like, if you live in an apartment and you don't have a designated, garage or somewhere to park your car that's private in your own space, you're less likely to want an EV anyway. And I just don't think that it's going to be sustainable or practical to assume that in the future, everybody or large groups of people are just going to routinely fast charge their EV like a gas car, like just drive it around, and then when you get low, you drive to the supercharger and charge up again. That's worse for the battery pack. Level 3 fast charging will always cost more, so that eats into the reasons to go electric. A lot of people go EV so they don't spend as much on gas. If you're having to spend supercharging prices every time, the cost advantages aren't there as clearly, at least. And especially if those people are like, well, because I can't charge from home, I need to buy the longer range EV. So now you're increasing the price of the upfront and the long term, and you're clogging up chargers that are made for people that are road tripping, not people that are just, driving around town. So I think that it'll be more cost effective and it'll become more common. I've already seen it happening where they have level 2, chargers in parking garages, and they'll have a few spots that are just for the EV owners of the building, and then they'll increase the number of spots over time, and apartments that prioritize that will get more tenants, or those tenants will pay more rent. So landlords will feel incentivized to offer at least some form of charging wherever you park. But that amount of equipment will always be cheaper. I'm not saying you have to charge, just saying there's a charger. Well, that's even more wasteful. Let's put it in and then not use it. You could also charge at the parking lot at the place that those people work. You could. I just think that you're more likely to be at home plugged in than you are at work. Like on average, people work. I mean, it changes depending on the job, but most jobs are a 9 to 5, which, it takes time to get to work and stuff. So it equates to like an 8-hour day, whereas you get home at 5 o'clock, you plug in, you have dinner, you watch a movie, you go to bed, you go to sleep, you're hopefully asleep for 7 to 8 hours. You wake up, you eat breakfast, you go out to the car. Now it's been plugged in for, 15, 16 hours. So it stays parked at home longer than it does at the office. The likelihood that employers are going to offer charging I think is less than the idea of landlords offering it, but I could be wrong. Uh, Most people don't live in apartments, just so we're clear. I've done research on that. Like, a lot of people just say, well, EVs will never take off because, or people get mad when I mention home charging. And I'm like, vast majority of cars have a household that they go back to and park at. Yes, I have slept in my car, by the way. What do you think is the most comfiest car for sleeping? Probably the biggest, I would assume. Um, I was talking about this the other day with my wife. I was like, so obviously we love this car and we're very happy with it, but someday, I'm not going to assume this car is going to last us, you know, 70, 80 years. It'd be cool if it did, but I don't think it will. Um, like, I would be impressed if this car lasted 20 to 25 years. That's amazing. That would be incredibly cool if we got it to that far. So down the road, someday, maybe we have uh, uh, several kids and we need a bigger car, or I don't know, we just have more money in the future and we decide we want something other than this car to drive around in. And we were debating between like the Model X and the R1S. And I was having this debate with Mike in the chat as well, Model Y Mike, and he was very correct that the R1S is a more functional SUV. But after discussing it with him, I was picking up my wife from errands, and she was just like, I asked her, I was like, someday way down the road, we're talking like 10, 20 years from now or whatever, I was like, if we wanted a bigger car, would you rather have a Rivian R1S or a Tesla Model X? And we're talking like used. We probably wouldn't buy it new. So not factoring in the price of the new vehicles, because obviously Model X new is super expensive, but it's going to be around for a long time. It's been around for a long time, so the prices on it, especially on the older Model X's, have gone down and stuff. And I assume I'm talking about buying a 2023 Model X in 2029 or whatever. Like, how much is that going to cost when it has 40, 50,000 miles on it? And she said Model X, and I asked her why, and she said that she wanted the supercharging network, and she preferred the higher range. Range is overrated, but the Model X does go a bit faster. And honestly, the charging speed, I think, is the bigger advantage. So obviously R1S has a more appropriate roof rack. It has a higher towing capacity. And it's probably a more roomy 7-seater than the Model X is. And I understand all that. Those are all good points, and a ton of cargo room in the R1S. But my main interest in the Model X is it's more aerodynamic than the R1S. It has a smaller battery pack, but also a higher peak charge speed. So that gives it a huge advantage over the R1S in terms of road trip speed, is that the peak charging speed of the Model X is 250 kilowatts. Peak speed of the R1S is more like 220. And the Model X is using a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, where the R1S, at least the large battery pack, is using like 135 kilowatt hour battery pack. R1S is super sweet. It's just, it does use CCS, and I lose a lot of interest in vehicles that choose a connector, because I don't plan on buying cars that I own for a year or two. We did not buy this car as a stopgap to hold us over until, the 2024 model. We want to buy a car and then use it for decades, ideally. And if I have to deal with CCS every single night, that really hurts the desirability of it, or rely on Electrify America. The good news is, by the time we're in the market, hopefully the Rivian Adventure Network is more widespread. But I also just prefer the design. I know some people hate the Model X, but I love the windshield that goes way back above your head. I've been in Model X's before, and I always appreciated the visibility of just the glass going all the way back. And I love the Falcon Wing doors. Some people hate them, but I'm a huge fan. I like that they present themselves. Even the front doors open themselves. The R1S doesn't do that. And especially if we had kids and stuff, if you're loading strollers into the second row, it's much easier to do that with the doors that go straight up than it is a traditional door that swings out. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Model X. It's just way out of my price range, and I don't really need it right now. I can't really justify it. If I had a Model X today, I would basically drive it the exact same way I drive my Model 3. And we haven't even filled up the Model 3 cargo space before. Even when we were running a bunch of errands and getting a bunch of groceries and filling it up with full of stuff, um, yeah, it wasn't. We didn't max out the storage space. So yeah, John says agreed on CCS being a deal breaker until Tesla opens up to them. Then maybe not. Yeah, I don't think it's. I don't think the network's going to open up that simply. Um, the Model X ends up costing $60,000 for a Plaid by then. That would be interesting. I don't want a Plaid. I prefer the efficiency. That's the main reason I would choose a Model X over an R1S. Is just the aero and the watt hours per mile is just going to be better with a vehicle like that. I know it's less practical. It's not as good if you're mounting things to the roof for towing, but I don't do that. I don't mount things to the roof and I don't tow, and I don't really see myself towing or needing a roof rack in the future. But I could see situations where my wife and I, like we're already talking about, doing more and more road trips where we sleep in the car. Model X, especially a 7-seater, would be good at folding down the third and second rows and just having a big mattress pad in the back. And we have 250 kilowatt supercharging access. Superchargers are the most plentiful of all charging stations and NACS. I'm a huge fan of it's so drastic. Like, it always amazes me how small the NACS connector is. It's so compact, it's so easy to hold and navigate and plug in. And we wouldn't get rid of this Model 3, for the record. Our goal is to hold on to this one forever until it breaks, basically, or gets totaled. Hopefully, never gets totaled. But regardless of how great the R1S is, it's still newish, and no way am I going to drive outside my home area having to depend on Electrify America. Maybe when Tesla opens it up. Yeah, I think that new superchargers will have CCS compatibility, but we still don't know when. We were told that would happen last year, and it still hasn't happened. So I think even the superchargers that open up to CCS, there won't be as many. Like, you'll be working with a much more limited network than you will be if you just have a Tesla that can access any supercharger, regardless of if it's old or new. I did not buy this car that I'm sitting in used, but that's because when we ordered it and when we got it, used Teslas cost more than new ones. So this was literally the cheapest way for us to get a Tesla, because all the used ones were way more expensive. So I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to pay a premium for a used car. I would buy a used car that was cheaper, but at the time that wasn't an option. So we didn't do it. But also, I really wanted iron phosphate. I was kind of tempted more recently with the price cuts, and not so much on new vehicles, but the price cuts have driven down the price of used Model 3s from like 2020, 2019. But they don't have the AMD Ryzen processor, so it might not age as well. They don't have the heated steering wheel, which I didn't think I would care that much about. When it came out, I was like, oh, cool, heated steering wheel. That's kind of nice. Now that I've had it for several months, I'm like, oh my God, like, this is becoming one of my favorite features, and I'm not sure if I could go back to not having it. I've driven my old car in the cold before, and I immediately noticed, like, yeah, steering wheels get pretty freaking cold. It's kind of annoying. So now that, like, it's kind of the sunk cost what do you call it, policy, or the sunk cost fallacy is like, we've already bought this one, and because we already bought it, I love it. Like, I love what we have. So I don't want to downgrade it anymore, because now I would be missing out on LFP, or I'd be missing out on the heated steering wheel, or now if I bought a new car, I would be missing out on park assist or ultrasonic sensors. So yeah, I'm kind of just like, nope, we got what we got, and I'm happy with it, and especially grateful that we get standard connectivity for life. You don't think about that for the first 8 years, but once 8 years go by, we'll find out how Tesla treats you when you don't have standard connectivity anymore. Let's see. How do you choose what car to buy? 100% of cars do 90% of use case. I look for 90% of the last 10%. The 90%. Okay, cool. Donkey says Adventure Network isn't 250 kilowatt like V3. It's still slow. Yeah, it's not only is the vehicle less energy efficient because it's not very aerodynamic and it's not very light, but also the charging speed is not great. And I've watched many Rivian owner videos disclose how the battery management system in Rivians is not all that great. So even in cold weather, they struggle to keep the inverters and keep the battery pack cool. So when they plug in, even when the charge station is working, they don't get their peak speed when they're supposed to, because um, either the way they design the battery pack or the way they design the battery management system, it's not able to keep the pack at a safe enough temperature to take in 220 kilowatts. It's just taking in 90 or 100 kilowatts. So inherently, I just think the road tripping experience of Rivians is probably going to continue to be worse than Tesla's. And it'll get better with the Adventure Network becoming more widespread, but still, I don't think anyone can really pass Tesla. There's so many superchargers available that, and they're continuing to grow, as we saw in the shareholder deck. It's just going to keep getting better and better and better. They're not slowing down, and they've got the reliability, they've got the better connector, they've got the plug and charge. You know, you don't need an app or anything. Rivian, if you rely on superchargers in the future, you'll probably still need to use the Tesla app and activate the charging session and all that. I would argue that 250 kilowatt chargers with high reliability are better than 350 kilowatt chargers with terrible reliability. Exactly. Yes, absolutely. I think 350 kilowatts is pretty overkill for most, unless you're doing like, you know, long distance road trips with an electric pickup truck. 350 kilowatts is, your battery pack is probably not going to be able to handle that for very long. And 250 kilowatts for most cars is still pretty quick, you know. Like, you don't sustain that speed for very long, but you still get from 0 to 50% within, you know, a few minutes, within a trip to the bathroom and back, and you're done. Donkey says, I drove from Knoxville to Birmingham in my Model 3, easiest car to road trip ever. Oh, yeah. Drove itself 95% of the way. Absolutely. I can attest to that as well. Tesla got that part of the ownership experience right, for sure. How do we tell what battery we got? I ordered Model Y long range 2 days after price cuts. I live in Dallas. Yeah, if you got the long range, you're getting 2170 cells. The only way to get 4680 cells is to get the Model Y all-wheel drive. It doesn't say long range. So if you bought an all-wheel drive Model Y with a max range of 260-something miles, that's 4680. And yeah, only the standard range Model 3 is iron-based. Correct. They don't have those in the Model Y, in the United States at least. Do I think Aptera is worth it with Tesla's new price cuts? Yeah, because I feel like Aptera is going after a completely different market than the Tesla is. Like, Teslas have gotten more affordable, and they are practical, but Aptera is not trying to be your last vehicle. Aptera is not trying to sit 4 or 5 people. Aptera is just trying to be incredibly cost-effective, and they do that not just with the upfront cost, but by charging itself. A vehicle with high range and low price that you don't have to charge. That's what Aptera is shooting for. And like, that's why I wasn't as interested. I mean, I would still be interested in trying it, but I wasn't as interested in reviewing like the 250 mile range Aptera, because I already have a 250 mile range EV. I know what that's like. If I was getting another vehicle, I would want it to unlock certain use cases that my Tesla can't. And I was like, I would like to own an EV with just an absurd amount of range if I want to do those crazy cannonball type road trips where I'm driving super, super far and I don't want to stop. Then yeah, I want to get as much range as possible. So that's why I want to try the 1,000 mile range one. But Neem, thank you for your support of the channel. I appreciate you. Let's see. Bought a Bolt in November and just sold it to Carvana and bought a Model 3 because of the price cuts, tax credit extension, and the fact that Carvana is still paying stupid amounts for used cars. Very excited for the way it worked. Nice! Congratulations, Justin. I hope you enjoy it. What a good choice. Yes, JDO Tech. I have stock in Tesla. Good morning, Neem. If I'm a big road tripper, would I get annoyed by the slightly slower charging Model 3 LFP versus Model Y long range and the more frequent stops? Well, I don't know who you are. I can't say for sure if you would get annoyed or not. I just recommend plugging in different vehicles to, this is not a sponsorship, but a Better Route Planner. A Better Route Planner is a free app you can download, and you can plug in your car. You can plug in what your percentage is when you leave your destination, plug in 2 different destinations, and compare the two. That's what I did. I plugged in a road trip that we do multiple times a year, which is like an all-day drive it takes to go from my house to my parents' house out of state. And I was like, okay, let me plug it in with the Model 3 long range. And it was something like, I don't know, 14 hours and 15 minutes. And then I plugged in the same route, but I switched it to the Model 3 rear-wheel drive with the LFP battery pack, and it said like 15 hours. I don't remember the exact numbers. I'm rounding up a little bit. I think it was closer to 30 minutes, but just because I assume the map is probably overestimating a bit. Let's say it's a difference of 45 minutes. Would taking an extra 45 minutes on a road trip that's, 15 hours, would that annoy you? I don't know. For me, no, because of the price gap. Like, I was going to have to spend an extra $10,000 to get long range. It was like $10,000 for 45 minutes twice a year. I'll just take the money. Like, who cares? That's not a big difference. But if it was a difference of like, okay, you can save 45 minutes and you only have to spend an extra $2,000. Yeah, maybe that's more doable. Will Aptera's safety score be terrible? Looks kind of fail. Safety score is not probably what you mean. I think you mean crash rating is what you're talking about. But I think most people just look at the Aptera and assume it must be dangerous because it looks weird without even really thinking much about how crumple zones work. So for one, it's made basically of forged carbon fiber, and a lot of the chassis is aluminum. So there's still crumple zones, just like a regular electric vehicle, like a Model 3. There's a section of the vehicle that crumbles and absorbs the impact because there's not a big combustion engine. So it falls apart to take the blow of the impact. There's still airbags in the Aptera. And the other thing is people just think that small vehicles in general are dangerous, which relatively is true. Generally, if there's a collision between two cars, the bigger one performs better than the smaller one. But the Aptera is not that small. The Aptera is actually wider than the Cybertruck. The Aptera is wider than the Hummer EV. So while sure that means that it probably would get totaled in a side swipe or a side collision, like most cars are going to get totaled. But your outward positioned wheels are more likely to take the blunt of that impact rather than the driver. Whereas because wheels on most cars are inside the vehicle, like if I get hit from the side, that car, that truck, whoever hits me is going right through the door, right? They're going to come right at me. Whereas with the Aptera, they're hitting the motor on the outside. So there's a great channel called Aptera Owners Club, and if you just look up how safe is the Aptera, he has a video on that, and he goes into exquisite detail on how common are certain collisions. So there's some where you could say, yeah, in this type of accident, the Aptera would perform worse than another car. But how common is that accident compared to like most collisions being like getting rear-ended? And think of how much space there is between where the driver and passenger sits in the Aptera compared to where the back of the vehicle is. There's a lot of room for crumple. There's a lot of room for the vehicle to absorb the blow. And essentially, they're going to try to make it as safe as they possibly can. So again, it annoys me because people just look at it and they're like, that's weird, it must be dangerous. Like they don't think about it. Like, well, visualize it for a second. This is a large vehicle, which means there's lots of space on both the front, back, and sides to absorb a lot of the blow from other impacts, and then look up exactly how common are those edge cases where, sure, it is a little bit dangerous, but by that logic, I guess we should all be driving Hummer EVs because, yeah, if you get hit by a semi-truck, you won't do so well in a Model 3 compared to a Hummer EV. Does that mean that we should all buy Hummer EVs? No. That's like, you got to draw the line somewhere and say, well, you can make a safer vehicle that's bigger, but there's compromises to that too. So I think Tesla and Aptera have done a very good job with making small vehicles as safe as possible. So I'm so close to buying a Tesla soon. I apologize for it taking so long, but I've been saving for a fat down payment for months now to get a monthly car payment I'm comfortable paying. Geez, congratulations, Neem. You don't have to apologize. You think I'm going to be mad? Oh my God. Why haven't you bought a Tesla yet? I'm going to ban anyone in the chat who hasn't bought a Tesla. No, I don't care. It's fine. Take your time. Teslas are expensive cars. And honestly, there's a lot of people that are probably not in a good financial position to buy a Tesla right now. And that's okay. Like, you're not a bad person for choosing to not buy a Tesla right now. I think the best Teslas are yet to come. The cheapest, best value Teslas will be not today, but 10 years from now. Let's see. Drew has a Model 3 LFP. That's correct. Me and Mike have the same car, pretty much. I think the biggest difference is Mike's car doesn't have ultrasonic sensors, but mine does. Other than that, I think we have pretty much the same car. My wife and I bought a Model Y long range when it went down $13,000 and qualifies for the $7,500 tax credit. You helped making our decision, so thank you. Loving the car. Oh, great! I'm happy you got it. Awesome. Yeah, that was a steal. That was a great price. I hope it continues to work well for you. I don't know what I did to help influence your decision, but what did I say? You should buy this one. I don't remember saying that. Jacob says, taking delivery of my Model 3 rear-wheel drive next month. Black paint, black interior. Ordered a few days after price cuts. Nice. I drove a black-on-black Model 3 last year. That's a really good color combo. I prefer the white-on-white. That's just me, but still, you can't go wrong with black-on-black. That's a dope looking vehicle. Okay, Elizabeth says, I don't understand your argument for NACS. I'm not interested in Tesla if superchargers are 100% open. Cable is too short for non-Tesla EA. 95% of chargers are broken. Either port or cable is bad. So I feel like I've explained this before, but Bjorn Nyland, who reviews tons of EVs in Europe, has brought attention to the fact that because the data connection port for CCS is at the top, and because the port is physically larger, because it's so big, that's not just coincidence, like, oh, okay, bigger port, big deal. No, because it's so much bigger, it's harder to navigate. It wears out the plastic around the port faster, so that when you plug in the charge port, it's often sitting lower. And you'll notice, I've noticed this too, just last night I was watching another video, when people are road tripping in EVs, especially in Europe, because they use CCS there's a lot of the time where you plug in the connector and it's not registering with the car, so you have to pull up on it. You have to pull up so that the data pins align, because over time that connector wears out. Because the Tesla NACS port is so small and so narrow, and it's a lot easier to navigate, and it's less being scraped along the sides like CCS is, they don't wear out as much. Superchargers have been around longer than CCS has. The NACS connector existed back in 2012, actually. And a lot of those supercharging stalls are still working. So it's more durable. The lock is internal. And yeah, I agree that superchargers will not just suddenly open and make everything easy. I don't know where you heard that argument. I never made that claim. Some people try to oversimplify it from what I see. It's like, oh, any day now, Tesla's just going to send out an update or start selling an adapter and suddenly you can charge any EV at any supercharger. That's not how it works. It will not work that way. It doesn't work that way in Europe, where they are opening up supercharging, but they're only doing it at select locations that are known for not being busy, because you have to park awkwardly to get the car charge port to the same place as the cable. And yeah, I've been to many supercharging locations, and I've only owned the car for 5 months, but I've been to at least 4 different supercharging locations where the cable barely reached the charge port. And I know that if it was a different vehicle, it definitely wouldn't reach. So the areas where superchargers are super busy, I don't think they'll ever open those up until there's just an insane amount of charging locations, which we're not even close to because there's still wait time sometimes. Or, the government agrees on NACS as a standard and everybody's forced to switch to it. But I don't think that's going to happen either. So, yeah, it's not a great situation pretty much for any EV that's using CCS, in my opinion, especially in North America. In Europe, you don't have a choice. You got to put up with it because the government picked it and they're not going to go back on that. So, but here in the US, if you want a road trip in a non-Tesla, you're kind of screwed right now, at least. So yeah, it's, and there's so much confusion surrounding third-party charging stations. Like another problem I see very regularly is like ID4 owners or Chevy Bolt owners not realizing what the peak charge speed of their car is. When you buy the car, they don't really make it super clear in the software or on the Monroney sticker, here's your peak charge speed. So ID4s or Chevy Bolts that max out at 50 or 150 kilowatts will go to the 350 kilowatt charge station and plug in. And then a Lucid Air could show up, or an Ioniq 5 could show up and say, hey, I would like to use the fast charger because you can't take advantage of it, but they're already gone. They plugged in their car and they went to get food. And a lot of the time, people with free Electrify America charging, because Electrify America tends to be a lot cheaper, they plug in and they wait till their car's at 100%. So there's all these EVs that are not super clear on what the different charge speeds are, what charging etiquette is, and what their car can charge at. And it just results in this big mess where people aren't able to take advantage of fast charging speeds like they're supposed to. So it's kind of a giant mess for multitudes of reasons, you know, and that's why I made that video a while back explaining why I know it's not the same situation for gas cars, but I think inherently, because of the difference of EVs, there will continue to be great advantages to picking your car based on the charging network. And I know gas cars don't work that way. We just drive them wherever and we fill them up wherever. But with EVs, it's inherently more complicated to fast charge a battery than it is to pour gas in a tank. And I think it will always be that way. It will always be more complicated. So the company that has a first-party solution that just lets you plug in and it knows what to do, that's always going to have a substantial advantage on the companies that are trying to do this three-point handshake where it's like, okay, Rivian has to tell EA how much of a charge speed to give, and then EA gives too much of a charge speed, so Rivian shuts off, and you have to download the app, and you have to sign up for the app, and then you sign up for the subscription, and then you select which charger you're on, tell it to charge at this rate, here's how much, like, that process is always going to be more complicated. And it'd be one thing if I saw ChargePoint or EA making good decisions on user friendliness and intuitiveness, but I'm not seeing it. They all seem to... I don't know why they can't just do simple card readers. That's what I don't get. Why can't it just be like a gas pump where you plug in and you swipe a card and it starts charging until you unplug? They don't want to do it that way. Everything's got to be through an app, and you got to select all these different settings, and like it's not a good sign, basically. Which is why I think Tesla will continue to have a substantial advantage. What's your prediction? Aftermarket jump up or down in price? Well, it's already aftermarket now. I predict it will go up 0.33% after hours. Wow, I nailed it. No, short-term price predictions are pointless. It's just like gambling. It's like trying to predict wind speed or the weather. You know, it's like... The Tesla stock price very rarely reflects how the company is doing, in my opinion. Usually when they announce amazing things, nothing happens, and then nothing will get announced and the stock will go way up for no reason. Like, it's very unpredictable, so I don't really bother with predicting it. Long-term or short-term, really. I was thinking about that. New Teslas will only be better and cheaper, but I could get either one in a few months now and be an OG, or wait 10 to 15 years for a better car and not be an OG. Well, at this point, there's millions of Teslas on the road. You're not an OG. Neither of us are OGs regardless. But waiting to buy a Tesla is like waiting to buy the latest iPhone. So I decided I'd rather buy a Tesla in a few months. Yeah, it's your call. I was ready, so I bought one. I just saying don't apologize for taking long. There's nothing wrong with taking your time. I took 3 years. We were discussing buying one for 3 years before we finally did it. Let's see. I can confirm that in the U.S., folks who know and or who are paranoid pull up on the handle to get the upper data ports to contact for the first 30 to 60 seconds, like we specifically support the cord. Oh, God. Skyborg says, I charged 150 times in 2022 on Electrify America with a Kia RV6. EA is 85% okay, then 15% hot garbage, and might add a long time to find a good charger. Well, it's unfortunately one of those things that people just, if they're going with an electric car from a gas car, they do not want a 85% success rate, you know. There's certain things that you can tolerate that, you know. If you go to watch a movie and 85% of people like it, you're like, okay, sure, that sounds like a decent movie. Only 15% of people didn't like it. But there's other things like road trips where you're planning around it and you're visiting people or you're driving for work or what have you. And then there's other things like, would you do skydiving from a place that has an 85% success rate? Like, no, obviously. So in a similar way with charging experiences, if 85% of the time you'll have a successful charging session, that's not good enough for a lot of people. Let's see. Tesla has to make like 1 million free YouTuber Roadsters. No wonder they have taken half a decade to release it. Only 84, technically. Yeah, they have public record of everybody that got enough referrals to win a free Roadster, and it's 84, which is, if it costs them, let's round up and say $200,000. I don't think it costs that much to build a Roadster, but let's say it's $200,000 a Roadster, and they give away 84 of them. That's $16.8 million. most automakers spend more than that on advertising in a month. So giving away 84 Roadsters is like nothing to Tesla. They just had like $3.6 billion in income in the last 3 months. So yeah, Roadster is not that expensive, even to give it away. What happened to the rumored factory in Mexico? I think it's still happening. They just haven't announced it. I'm not sure why. Maybe they're still finalizing details, but yeah, I mean, there was a lot of heavy rumors supporting it, and there was footage and pictures of Elon meeting with politicians and congressmen in Mexico and stuff. I am surprised we haven't got an announcement about it yet, but maybe they're still weighing out their options. How does a bug even get in here? Jeez. Tesla just released a new YouTube video. Thank you, Michael. What is Keep it vague. What it is? What did they? Well, we're waiting for the webcast that starts in 15 minutes. Oh yeah, Giga Nevada. They had that in their presentation already. Are Teslas popular in your area? Yeah, pretty popular. I'd say every time I go out, I see probably 5 to 10. I live in a pretty rural area, so there's not like a ton of cars, but I'm definitely not special by owning a Tesla in my area. It's not like people are like, whoa, look, a Tesla. You know, that doesn't happen. They're about as common as seeing a Prius. Sky says, totally, 85% is not good enough. Supercharger is close to 100%, hence why I'm interested in Model 3 standard range. Yeah. Do we expect Cybertruck will be mentioned on the call? What details? I think if there were details to announce, they would have put it in the shareholder deck. At least that's how it was for the refreshed Model S and X. That was like updated pictures and artwork and everything was dropped during the shareholder deck. And then in the earnings call, they just talked about, okay, we updated it and it's a bit more expensive now, but it's really fun. So if there's not new Cybertruck info in the shareholder deck, I doubt there's new Cybertruck info during the call. Unfortunately, I have something coming up in about an hour, so I will not be able to listen to the earnings call with you guys this time, but I will catch the highlights. If there's any big news drops, I'm sure I'll see it. I'll read about it in the news. Do you recommend the Tessie app to use with your Tesla? I've heard good things about it, but I've not used it myself, so I can't recommend it. The approach Tesla investors seem to take is sell the news and buy the rumors. Yeah. I think it's so, like, there's so much trading volume behind Tesla stock that it's kind of, to me, like, I know certain people that say, you know, I can't make short-term price predictions, but I do know it'll be this much in the long term. And I'm like, how can you know that? Like, it's all priced based on speculation of how big the company will get. And because Tesla has no deadline for robotaxis or Tesla Bot, you could theoretically always say, well, they're going to blow up to be way bigger than they are today in the next 5 years. You can always say that because Tesla doesn't have a deadline to stick to. They can say, well, next year robotaxis will take off. And even if robotaxis do happen, even when that day comes, you'll be able to say, well, Tesla Bot hasn't launched yet. When Tesla Bot launches, their revenue is going to quintuple again. So there's a bunch of people that are pricing that in and a bunch of people that aren't and a bunch of people that don't like how sketchy or unpredictable Elon is. So as soon as Elon does something weird like buys Twitter, or there could be something else in the future, you know, maybe Elon decides I want to buy YouTube or something. You know, I don't think YouTube will be sold by Google, but still that kind of example of like maybe SpaceX gets Starship working, but it's really pricey and really expensive, and they don't have enough revenue to keep the company afloat. So Elon decides, I'm going to sell a bunch more Tesla stock to help secure the future of SpaceX and make more Starship rockets. So without warning, without any notice, Elon can suddenly sell a bunch more stock, and then the value will go down again, which causes a chain reaction because people go, Elon's selling stock. Oh no, I better sell too. That means it's going to go down. And there's people that are shorting the stock, and there's margin calls that get executed regardless of the state of the company, depending on what the price is of the stock. So Elon is Mr. Tweet. Funny, just tweet. He tweets like crazy, and that makes people nervous, and they'll sell the stock based on it. It's very emotionally based, you know. Which is why I don't even make the prediction that like I think Tesla stock will 10x or 100x or whatever. Like I think the only thing I can feel confident enough to say is that I think over the course of 10 years, it will probably go up. How much up, I don't know. Does it have a high likelihood of going way, way up? I'd say sure, but I'm not going to say like we know how much. It could be a 10x, it could be a 100x, like, or it could be a 5x, it could be a 3x. I don't know. Um, because the market responds so bizarrely to it. It's not based on how the company performs. It's based on how shareholders are feeling that day. So yeah, I that's why like I own Tesla stock, yeah, because I like being able to say I'm a shareholder, and I do think in the long term it will go up, but um I'm not putting every last spare dollar I have into Tesla stock. Like Tesla is not my biggest position. Um it has grown in size because of how the stock has performed since I bought it, but I've also seen it lose over half of its value within a year. And it would be naive for me to say that'll never happen again. That could easily happen again. Who knows? Um, I'm not coming from a gas car. This Tesla would be my first EV, but also first car in general, and I'm working towards it because I don't want to deal with EA's 85% success rate. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the videos I've watched with Electrify America, it's not even 85. Like, especially in the winter when it's cold, the new Electrify America hardware they put in just straight up doesn't work when the temperature gets too low. And that's when the success rate is more like 50-40%. And depending on what car you buy, the experience can be worse. Like the Ioniq 5, I thought was pretty great. Like the design's kind of cool. It's got over 300 miles of range. Who cares, right? And it's a decent design. It's got good storage space. It's fast, and it's not that expensive. So I was like, okay, Ioniq 5 is pretty cool. Then I found out later it doesn't have battery preconditioning, which means that when you're routed to an EA station, even though the car can technically go up to 220 kilowatts, people would plug in and get 40 kilowatts because the car had no way to precondition the battery at all. There wasn't a button you couldn't route it to. You couldn't go into software and say precondition. There was just no battery preconditioning. So even though it had a peak speed of 220 kilowatts, depending on the weather, you were just not getting that at all. So that's a situation where you can say, okay, Electrify America is working, but the charging experience is still terrible because there's no battery preconditioning. And just recently, they sent out updates to the Ioniq 5, but they're not over the air. You have to take it back to a dealership, and there were certain dealers that were charging you money to update the car so that it got battery preconditioning. It's an option now, but it wasn't for like the first year of ownership. So, and I don't know when that's coming to the EV6 or what have you. So there's all kinds of issues like that. No, it doesn't peak at 350 kilowatts. It can take a 350 kilowatts, but the battery pack's only getting 220. That's a misconception a lot of people have. You need the 350 kilowatt charge station to get 220 kilowatts. And you see, this is why this is why people don't buy non-Teslas, because you have to kind of be a nerd about everything. Can confirm 2022 early EV6 and Ioniq 5 charge at 30 kilowatts if below freezing. Still no update for Kia EV6. It really stinks. Yes, thank you, Skyborg. That is a huge problem, and that severely limits the fast charging and road tripping capability of cars if they can't even do basic battery preconditioning stuff. Elon said he wouldn't sell stocks for at least a year, but we are hearing that Twitter has not paid rent in San Francisco and England. Will these lawsuits make him sell more Tesla to raise more cash? He could. I mean, Elon says things that he doesn't do. Like, he said a year ago or so that he's done selling Tesla stock, and then like 2 months later he sold more. So I've seen him go directly against his word like that. Like he said, no, we're good. I'm all done selling. And then, hey, wait a minute. I realized that Twitter's in trouble. I want to sell more stock. So, and it doesn't have to be Twitter. Like it could be something else. It could be Neuralink. It could be the Boring Company. Something could come up where one of his companies that he really cares about is about to go under, or there's another company that shows up that he wants to buy out and take over, ChatGPT, or I don't know, or you know, something stupid. Mastodon. I've decided I want to buy Mastodon too. So that would just blow people's minds, wouldn't it? So I've seen videos of people. No, what you cannot find H2O dancing. You will not find. Try to find one, because I promise you won't. There's no YouTube video of an Ioniq 5 that is actually taking a 350 kilowatt charge rate. you have to plug into a 350 kilowatt stall to get 220 kilowatts because of how they design their battery pack. It cannot accept 350. It's weird. My Model 3 Performance is worth $29K on Tesla trade-in, and it's in mint condition with 20,000 miles. Yeah, I keep trying to tell people this. Trade-in value is not resale value. Those are two very different things. For Tesla, they're going to turn that car around, and they're going to have to find a buyer for it, and it's going to sit on their lot for a while. It's a liability to them. It's not the same thing as selling your car to someone who plans on owning it and using it. So if you want the best amount of money back, you should sell it independently. Trade-in value is how you get money quick and easy, but it's not how you get the most amount back. Did you hear the news yesterday? Aptera will get 700 miles of range per hour using the Tesla fast charging stations. They also have solar panel. Oh, what are you talking about? Yeah, no. They said 40 kilowatts minimum up to 60 kilowatts, which translates to 400, 600. Yeah, I did a whole video on that, Mark. Feel free to watch my video on it. Let's see. I feel bad for new 2023 Model S or X owners. Glad Tesla brought back round steering wheel as an option for free, but for anyone who already bought in, they have to pay for a retrofit. Anyone I've talked to that has bought the yoked Model S or X has said they like the yoke, or they got used to the yoke. I ran polls on this, and the option that they enabled with the steering wheel was actually the least popular option on the poll. I ran an option of, would you rather have a yoke with no stalks, yoke with stalks, steering wheel without stalks, or steering wheel with stalks? And most people chose steering wheel with stalks, which is what the Model 3 and Y have. And the next most popular option was yoke with no stalks, which is what Tesla has been doing for the past 2 years. The least popular option at like 8% of the vote was steering wheel without stalks, which is what the option Tesla brought back is. So everyone I've talked to has said that the yoke is not that bad. It's just the capacitive buttons that they don't like, and that's still present. So I like the yoke personally. I haven't tried it, but based on what people have said about it and how it looks, and I'm pretty sure I would like it if I tried it. But yeah, it seems like the capacitive buttons are usually the more annoying thing, and they didn't change that. Once you account for taxes on your used car sale, the difference is probably not much. Well, there's taxes on new cars too, but yeah, you'll still get better than trade-in value, I assure you that. Probably trading it into a dealer that doesn't know what they're doing is probably your best bet. It sounds like someone earlier traded in their Bolt and got a huge amount back for it. I forget their name, but Justin, yeah, he bought a Bolt in November and sold it to Carvana because they're still paying big bucks for used cars. Let's see. What's your thoughts on Ford ending the dealership experience and going for a Tesla or Macy's S-type shopping experience? Macy's? What? I hate negotiating. Like, yeah, of course. Dealers don't need to exist for cars anymore. I think that's obvious. Why do Apple and Tesla undervalue their products so much? I always just sell privately because all companies do that. They're not turning that around and using it like an independent party is. It's a liability for them. They have a car that they have to sit around, take care of, and try to find a buyer for, which takes time, energy, and money. So they're just doing something quick. They're not doing something like, we're going to make a huge profit on this. Let's see. Just HDO, just find a video of it actually accepting a 300, like on the Ioniq 5 screen while plugged in, showing 350 kilowatts. It never happens. I promise. I looked. I got into a big discussion with someone about this, and I had to clear it up because they were convinced that because of the wording on Hyundai's website, they say it can plug into 350 kilowatt charge stations. Yeah, it can plug into them. That doesn't mean it's actually getting 350 kilowatts out of it. Dealers have no idea what they're doing. I see heavily degraded 2012 Nissan Leafs listed for $13,000. Ooh, yikes. Yeah, so the earnings call is starting soon, so I will not be streaming this one with you guys, but I hope you enjoy it. Hopefully Tesla has some exciting updates for you guys. I think that it's mostly just the company's looking good, money's coming in, profitable, earnings per share was high, and lots of full self-driving revenue and operating margins, even at lower prices, are still good. So I'll be wrapping it up here, but I hope you enjoy the call, and I will chat with you all again very, very soon. Take care. Have a good one.